Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone is well. I just want to say thank you so much for joining Lakehead University's virtual homecoming. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Your audio and video is automatically disabled by default, and at no time is your video or your computer screen accessible to the moderator, presenters, or anyone taking part. Also, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and after the presentation, there'll be a time for some Q&A. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker today, Shandor Alfonso. Shandor attended Lakehead University, where he played varsity hockey for the Thunderwolves from 2005 to 2010, and he helped the team capture the OUA Queen's Cup Championship in 2006. Shandor graduated from Lakehead with honors Bachelor of Commerce degree, majoring in information systems, and he also earned a Master's of Business Administration degree. He started officiating after his playing days were over, and he was hired by the NHL in September 2014, where he's been a linesman ever since. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Shandor. So Shandor, whenever you're ready.
Hey everybody, would you bear with me here for a second? We're just going to start with a quick video. Oh boy, information system major, and I'll get there, don't worry. All right, can everyone hear it? All right. Like I said, information system major to NHL official, and I forget how to work this technology sometimes. But good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me at the first ever, and hopefully, you know, maybe the only Lakehead University's virtual homecoming. I love everything about this institution. I'm a proud graduate, and I'm very happy to be part of this. I've done a few public speaking engagements before this and before COVID, and I must say this is a little bit less nerve-wracking. You don't have to picture the whole audience in their underwear, and you just kind of get to relax and do your thing. As you heard and as you saw from the video, I'm very fortunate to say I am one of the NHL's on ice officials. I am a linesman, and yes, that is my real full-time job. In my travels, people always look at me funny when I tell them what I do for a living, and they always ask me, yeah, but like, what's your real job? And although slightly offended at the time, I kind of do get it, because I feel like I haven't worked a single day since I was hired by the NHL 6 years ago. And just ask my wife, when asked what her husband does for a living, she jokingly says, oh, him and his idiot buddies live in a beer commercial. Now, I grew up and still currently live in Orangeville, which is a small town in South Central Ontario. Growing up in a 3-bedroom home with my brother and 2 sisters, my parents worked extremely hard and created an environment where we all knew we can do or be anything we wanted to be, but not just because we wanted it. They taught us that we could do it if we worked for it. My parents were both very aware of the obstacles people face in life, and they definitely did not shelter us from them, having gone through some of them themselves. But instead of having us look at these obstacles and think of these obstacles as a disadvantage or something negative, they had us view them simply for what they are, as just another thing you have to overcome to get exactly where you want to be. Now, my path, the path I took to becoming an NHL linesman isn't exactly a common one. And because of that, my career as an on-ice official has been relatively short when compared to some of my colleagues. I've been working in the league for 6 years now, but I've only been officiating hockey for 10. And that's mainly because I didn't grow up being an official or wanting to become a professional official. Just like many other Canadian kids, I grew up a hockey player. And once you get to a certain level at hockey, it's kind of ingrained in your entire being to dislike anything or anyone who gets in the way of winning. And that's kind of what officials do. So as long as I can remember playing the game, I disliked the guys in stripes, and my ultimate goal was to make the NHL. But unfortunately, at 26, after having a pretty successful playing career in the OHL and at LU, and earning 2 degrees from LU, what was my ultimate goal for over 2/3 of my life was no longer a strong possibility. I realized I wasn't going to make it, and that you can't dream your way into being an NHL player. And it was devastating. Actually, to be quite honest, devastating may have been a little bit of an understatement at the time. I was 26, and I had been working 20 years for my childhood dream, and I felt it slip away due to only a few bad choices I had made along the way. And the Coles Note version is that I took too many days off. I let too many coaches kind of get in my head and discourage me from doing my best all the time. And I didn't put in the extra work that nobody sees behind the scenes. For example, when I was 18, along with 4 other players, I was invited to attend a new skills and development program. And we all attended one day. And then I thought working my summer job was a bit more important, and I didn't go anymore. Um, Out of the 5 guys that were invited that attended that first day, I was the only one to not play in the NHL. And that right there was probably the biggest live and learn experience I've ever gone through. Luckily for me, several years later, after graduating LU and finishing my hockey career at LU, when I was old enough to properly apply it, I remembered something my dad always taught us growing up. He always used to say that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So I got up, dusted myself off, put away my hockey stick, and kept working towards my ultimate goal of making the NHL. Now, my goal remained the exact same, but I knew in order to make it happen, I had to change the way I was going to get there. So at 26 years old, I took a full-time banking job at the Royal Bank to pay the bills. And, as some of you may be able to relate, I had some student loans, so I had to do that to pay the bills. And after a full day's work, I'd get in my car, drive to the rink, and I'd strap on my skates, put on my referee sweater, and grind out 2 or 3 minor hockey or men's leagues games. And I worked a lot of hockey in that first year so I could learn as much as possible in a very short amount of time. Now, Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows. And I learned that to be very true early on in my transition from playing to officiating. I knew the NHL was exactly where I wanted to be. And with a little bit of help, I created a vision in my mind of the path I needed to take to get there. Now, to get anywhere in life, you have to do it one step at a time. You have to trust the process, and why not enjoy the process? So that's exactly what I did. And after working 1 full year in some really cold hockey rinks, and sometimes on really early mornings, I made a step in the right direction. The Ontario Hockey League, which is a major junior league for some of you who don't know, that develops many players, coaches, and officials, and also sends many of all 3 to the NHL, invited me to their training camp to try out for a roster spot on their officiating team. it was a little strange for me at the time because only 5 years earlier, I had been a player in that exact same league, and getting to where I wanted to be didn't exactly work out to plan. But I worked hard and I made the roster. Now, this side of the sport was still so new to me, and I had so much to learn and experience before I reached my goal. So I continued to do the minor hockey and men's leagues um, at the same time to get as much experience as possible. Now, fast forward 3 years, 3 more years of working full time at the bank, officiating hockey all 12 months of the year, 6 or 7 days per week in the winter, and 2 or 3 days per week in the summer. Throw a new young family in the mix, and you can imagine how hectic my life was at the time. But after putting in that work for 4 full years, the NHL came calling. I was invited to the first ever Nhl Exposure Combine for officials, and I was the only guy out of the camp to sign an NHL officiating contract 2 weeks later. I put in that extra work that I missed as a player, and I took another step in the right direction. Now, a lot of times in sports, you see a player get drafted or even make it to the big leagues, and after years of putting in work, it doesn't quite pan out. Obviously this happens in other areas of life, but I use the sports example because it's usually on display for the whole world to see. For whatever reason, the player exhales. They take their foot off the gas pedal and they stop doing the work that got them there in the first place. I was fortunate enough to sign an officiating contract with the NHL. I said goodbye to the banking world, but I knew I still had a long way to go before I reached my dream. Now, in most cases, when you sign on as a linesman, you sign on to work both the American Hockey League and the National League, and you're on a probationary period where you can be released at any time. Typically, a linesman spends one full season on a minor league deal and then gets promoted. I worked both leagues for 2 years, being tested mentally and physically many times by players, coaches, officiating managers, and fans before being promoted to full-time NHL status. Being passed up after my first year and then coming back and working hard in my second and being promoted, this experience led me to believe that when faced with adversity in life, you really only have two choices. You can give up and kind of just go through the motions, or you can give it all you got. And I can honestly sit here and say this with conviction that hard work 100% pays off. Shortly after my promotion to full-time status, at a party, my wife kind of forced on me to celebrate the achievement. And I say forced because if there's any basketball fans in the audience here, you would have seen LeBron James after he just won the Western Conference Championship, and how he didn't really celebrate and was just like, the job's not done. Yeah, we're moving on, but the job's not done. And I sometimes have a tendency to do that a little bit in my life. But at the party, my younger sister asked me, what do you do when you reach your goal after your dreams become reality? My answer was very simple, but I could tell by her reaction, it wasn't quite what she was expecting. I said, you set new goals. It's pretty simple. You reach a little higher. And my sister's 8 years younger than me, and she was in her early 20s at the time. And I think she was really hoping for me to say, like, you go to Disneyland or you buy yourself a new car or something exciting like that. Because I could tell she was pretty disappointed with my answer. But it's kind of funny. My line of work is very similar to being a student or a candidate for a job, in that it's very hard to avoid comparing yourself to others instead of just going out and being the best version of yourself. In my job, we're all competing for big games and for playoff roster spots. Many students are competing for top grades, and all of us are competing for great career opportunities. About a month ago, I finished working my first NHL playoff assignments in the Toronto bubble, which in my line of work is a big deal, and I'm very proud of. And again, typically a full-time linesman will work one full season, and then in their second season, get an opportunity to work the playoffs. I, on the other hand, worked 3 full seasons. And then this year, in my 4th season, I finally earned a playoff roster spot. Now, clearly, this took a little longer for me to learn than others in my job, but it's important in classes or in your career to learn how to adapt, to make small tweaks to what you do on a daily basis, and really to make any changes necessary to get your desired end result without getting discouraged. That's the main part. Everybody knows Albert Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Everything that happens to us in life is a learning experience, if you look at it that way. Take it in stride, let it teach you. And when doing or going through something similar, take what you learned and apply it. My current goal is to work the Stanley Cup final and to be on the ice when the Stanley Cup is handed out. I still have a long way to climb before I'm at the top of the NHL officiating world. But this formula of working hard, never giving up, and believing in your own abilities hasn't failed me yet when fully executed. Now, Oprah once said, when you work hard, do well, and do your best, people notice. And a couple years ago, at a screening of a documentary I'm blessed to be a small part of, I had the honor of meeting Willie O'Ree. On January 18th, 1958, he became the first Black player in NHL history. And you want to look at a person overcoming obstacles. I mean, he made his dream a reality in a time when almost everyone was telling him he couldn't do it just because of the color of his skin. It was a time where a Black American president or vice president wasn't even a thought, rather than a possibility or a reality. But, he kept his nose to the grindstone, and he chased his dream. The man let his play on the ice speak for itself, and he wasn't going to let anyone stop him from achieving his dream. A few years ago, him and I were both honored to serve as ambassadors for the NHL's Hockey is for Everyone campaign. And his incredible achievement is still recognized and celebrated today. The Boston Bruins noticed back in his day in 1958, and we still all recognize and support his incredible achievement. After listening to him and a few other players speak about their experiences as Black hockey players, I remembered a night early on in my officiating career when I was faced with a pretty big obstacle. After refereeing a game in my hometown, and I remember thinking I did a pretty good job, because during the game, both teams were informing me of their displeasure with my services provided throughout the evening. I stepped off the ice and walked through a group of parents to get to the dressing room, and a father yelled out, "Nice job," followed by calling me the N-word. Instantly, two things went through my head. It was almost like I was in a cartoon, and I had like a tiny angel on one shoulder and a tiny devil on the other. And the devil is telling me to go back to your hockey days and drop the gloves and teach this guy a lesson. And believe me, I wanted to so bad. But the angel was reminding me of my dad's words, telling me that life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. If I had done what I wanted to do to that man, I wouldn't be working my dream job in the NHL, and I probably wouldn't be here with you today. Looking back now, that man was merely a distraction, a drunk, embarrassing distraction, to be completely honest. But if you let distractions lead you away from your path, you'll never get to where you want to be. Now, if all you heard today was how lucky I am, or how great my job is living in a beer commercial, then you missed the point. My goal was to pass on how extremely powerful it is to stay true to exactly what you want in life. And also how important it is to work extremely hard for it every day, even on the days you don't feel like it. I once read that there are many great traits of gifted individuals. However, what separates the average from the good and the good from the great is something very simple. And the quote went on to say, the very best at anything give 100% on everything that requires no talent at all. And I'll say that last part again. The very best at anything give 100% on everything that requires no talent at all. Now, finally, I've been rambling on for a little while, so I'll end with this. I have experience working in the banking industry, and currently I'm working in the NHL. Two completely different careers. The only thing anyone would ever say the two have in common is money. But I'd argue this. I worked in sales in the bank, and whether you're talking sales, sports, politics, or anything for that matter, what you're constantly doing is selling yourself and asking people to trust you. You're selling your ability to get the job done with hard, consistent work. And you're trying to get people to trust that the job will be done efficiently, effectively, and with integrity. So I say sell yourself with enthusiasm and never let anyone question your work ethic. Treat every day as an audition and watch how fast you'll be setting new goals and reaching higher than you ever thought you would. And I'll just end with a little video. All right. Thank you guys for your attention, and thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this great event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful presentation. And I know if I were to unmute everyone, we would hear a round of applause, but I won't. I did see a couple little clap emojis.
I saw those too. Thank you guys. Thank you.
So if anyone has any questions, you can just type them in the chat and I will read them out. You can either send them as a group or you can send them to me privately, whatever's works best for you, and I'll read them off. So we do have a couple questions. So one of the questions is, how did you get your linesman number? Did you get to pick it or was it assigned to you?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Well, oddly enough, that the Nhl Exposure Combine that I was fortunate enough to be invited to, we were playing a hockey tournament, and we were also officiating games when we weren't playing. So the very first game I was assigned to officiate, I put on the jersey, and we were in Buffalo. So I went in front of the Buffalo Sabres symbol where their dressing room is, and I asked someone to take a picture of me in my NHL linesman jersey. And 2 weeks later, I get the call, and I get hired, and they tell me to come in for an interview. And they were like, think of a number you want to use, and we'll show you what numbers are available, but just think of a number in your head. So I remember looking back at the picture and being like, I can't believe this was 2 weeks ago. I put my first NHL jersey on. Now I'm being hired. And I look at my arm in the jersey, and it's got number 52 on it. So I'm like, oh, that's weird. Okay, 52. So then I go to the office, and we go through the numbers, and 52 was one of them. So I don't know, it just was like, I think I just thought to myself, that's my number. So I was able to select it of the numbers available, and that was the first ever NHL jersey I put on. So that was the number I picked, and I'll just keep rolling with 52 because it's been working so far.
That's lovely. Okay, our next question is, was it important for you to get a degree that you could kind of fall back on while pursuing your goals? And would you recommend all athletes to take academics just as seriously as their sports careers?
That's a really good question. I have 2 young kids now, and I absolutely um, push them and tell them how important school is and how important it was for me to, the thing with my education, I don't really use it right now in this job, but there is a lot of things in the NHL to do after I'm done on the ice. And I know that my education is going to put me ahead of so many people maybe trying to get the same job as me that have similar experience that I have, but they don't have that degree behind them. So it is so important to go back. I remember I was finished playing junior hockey, and it was either go to school and you can play at school and get your degree, or it was go play pro and try and still chase the dream. And I had a conversation with geez, I don't even remember who it was now, but the advice was so good. They're like, the pro league isn't going anywhere. Go get your degree, have options. And looking back now, I have many friends that went and played pro instead of getting their degree, and they continued playing longer than they wanted to because they had nowhere to go or nothing to do. They were like, I don't have an education. I don't know what job to go do. So they just continued playing. And getting hurt, and because their head wasn't there. But I push education to my kids. Anytime I do speaking events, I push education, and I think it's so important, and I'm so grateful that I decided to go do it.
Wonderful. Thank you. What are some of the most craziest or most unusual experiences you've had on the ice in the NHL?
Well, I've been punched a few times in the face, breaking up fights. I've been slashed once by a player, and that was pretty crazy because I don't think I played hockey I still play hockey now, not competitively, but I still play hockey now, and I've never seen anything like that ever happen. I remember a couple games after it happened, McDavid comes up to me, and he's like, I cannot believe that guy slashed you. He's like, I've been playing hockey my whole life, and I've never seen anything like that, and I cannot believe he did that. And I was like, yeah. And then a few years later after that, McDavid said to me, are you happy that the guy who slashed you didn't get a contract this year? And I started laughing, and McDavid doesn't speak much, so I thought it was a pretty funny joke.
That's too funny. So our next question is, what is the most, oh, sorry, let me try this again. What game is the best or most memorable for you, and why?
Um, probably my, um, probably my first game, in the NHL. It was Buffalo, Florida, in Buffalo, and I think it was so memorable for me because my whole family was there. My mom, my dad, all 3 of my siblings, my wife, my kids. I had a ton of friends that came, and we all came in the dressing room after, and some of them were officials, so they were mingling with guys they had been watching on TV for years. And it was, I kind of just sat back and looked around the room, and it was something that I'll never forget. So that's probably my most memorable. It was actually funny. I played in Sudbury in the OHL, And the year after I came, I wore number 16, and Derek McKenzie wore number 16 for years before that. He was a big player. So he was playing in that game, my first ever game. And I remember kicking him on a face-off, and he just gave it to me, calling me a rookie. You don't know what you're doing. You shouldn't be in this league. You're a rookie. And I was thinking the whole time he was yelling at me, I'm thinking, I wore this guy's number on the same team in the OHL as him, and he's just yelling at me my first. But the whole experience is just very memorable for me.
Lovely. What happens when you have a goal, but there are days in which you don't feel like, when there's days in which you feel like you don't know what you're doing?
Oh, that happens a lot. I think that still happens to me sometimes, but I think the most important thing is to not drag out that feeling for days and days and days, and try and keep it, the negative thought or whatever you're going through, try and keep it to a minimum, to a day if you can. So everyone has bad days. Everyone has bad days, and they go through that. And I think that's part of being human. So there's no way to completely avoid that. But I think it's important to, once you go through that day, the next day, wake up and move forward. Acknowledge that you had a bad day yesterday, and get back on track the best way you can. Even if you do something tiny, like for example, let's say you have a fitness goal, for example, and you feel like you're having a bad day, you don't want to do anything, you take the full day off, you maybe have a cheat meal. This is just an example. But the next day, get out and go for a walk, do something small to get back on track. Whatever it is, if you're writing a paper, if you're doing research, whatever it is you're doing, do something small after having that bad day to try and get yourself back in the groove. Because I find, once you get in flow, once you're in that groove, I was fortunate enough to get there in the playoffs, and it's just a great feeling. So if you can get your mind off of the bad thing that happened and just move forward and do something small the next day, I think that's a big thing.
What was your most memorable game as a Thunderwolf hockey player?
Oh boy, I have so many. We used to we had the best fans, and I remember one night we had a group of students that came, and they used to paint their bodies, and they painted my last name, the ALP, on, and they were just cheering for me the entire game. Every time I touched the puck, every time they announced, even if it was a penalty, like they just cheered for me. And it was, I don't know, it was pretty surreal, because you, as a player, I was never one of the best players on the team. I worked extremely hard. I was gritty, so I was in there mixing it up. But I was never one of the best players. So that just, I don't know, it kind of was a pretty memorable experience for me. And then I think I ran into them at the pub maybe the next week, and it was a cool experience.
What was your thought process in choosing to go to Lakehead University?
That is a good question. So when I was recruited by Larry Bone, who's still the head scout for the Lakehead Thunderwolves hockey team. Well, my first thought was, where is Thunder Bay? But I had really only two options. I was enrolled at York University, and when Lakehead came along, what drew me to the school was the intimacy of the classrooms. I went to York for a year, and you were really only a number of one of 500 students, and the professor didn't know you. To get extra help was very difficult. And I was informed that Lakehead much more intimate. The teachers and professors are much more willing to help and able to help, because they don't have 500 students in their class. I was drawn to the outdoors of Thunder Bay, and I'm so glad that we still go up there almost every year today, because we still have friends up there. So the intimacy of the school, the hockey program for sure. I was told that it was run like an OHL hockey team, where The building was packed almost every night, and the fans were wild, cheering for you. And everything that I was told about the school was true. And my wife and I are very glad that we went. Very proud LU graduates, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Got another Lakehead question for you. How do you feel Lakehead prepared you for life after university?
Well, geez, to be honest with you, Lakehead, Lakehead did an amazing job. And because the community is such a tight knit community. There's so many people within the business world that are connected somehow to the university. So I was a business student, and after my second year, um, through Lakehead, I got an interview with RBC Royal Bank. Murray Wahlberg, who is part of the institution. He's been part of it. He's a graduate. He's been part of it for a long time. So he gave an interview to me, got me a job with RBC, and not only the classes and the professors did a great job of preparing me for my life after school, but the connections that the institution has and the community that supports it helped. So it was there were so many things that helped prepare me for life after. We had so many great professors going through our MBA, but I think there was a combination of that and having real world experience in the bank and real job experience helped me get to where I wanted to go and be able to do a great job while I was pursuing my dream.
Obviously, you have to remain impartial, but have you ever been starstruck by any of the players on the ice? If you can answer this.
Absolutely. I can that I can answer. And I, like, I'm a fan of the game. I have been for a long time. And my first year, I remember there was two times I was starstruck and caught myself watching the game as a fan instead of working. And it was only for a couple seconds, but one of them was Patrick Kane. The way he just can hang on to the puck and not get smoked. He's not a very big guy. But Patrick Kane's one of them, and Alexander Ovechkin made a move or scored a goal one time. And I just remember, you're in the zone, you're working, and then they make a move, and you're just like, relax, and you're like, oh my goodness. And then you're like, oh geez, I'm working. You got to get back into it. So that's happened to me a couple times. Patrick Kane, Alex Ovechkin's done it once, and then almost every time I worked Detroit when Pavel Datsyuk was playing, at least one time in a game, he would do something that just put everyone in awe.
Okay, our next question is, what is your favorite memory at Lakehead?
So many. So when I was at Lakehead, we had our sports teams were a tight-knit group. Although we were all playing different sports, and a lot of times we didn't have that much in common when it came to our sport, but we were proud LU athletes, and we used to have some great parties where all teams would be there, and we just have a great time hanging out, laughing, joking, getting away from the hard work that we put in every day. We'd be up 6:30 in the morning for practice, then go to class, and then sometimes we'd have a team workout. So we worked hard, and it was nice to kind of get together as an entire group of athletes, and you'd be able to vent what you're going through and talk about what you're going through, and everyone had that in common. And it was those were one of my favorite memories, just being together with the group of athletes and having a great time and kind of forgetting about the grind that we went through every day and just enjoying ourselves. But as an entire huge group instead of just with your team.
And our last question for today is, what was the most challenging transition pieces for you from a student athlete to working in the bank to becoming a linesman?
Time management. Time management was always difficult as a student athlete. And then when I got into real life and I'm working at the bank and I'm trying to pursue my dream, having another time management piece, having the home and work, the balance, the home life and work life balance, was always difficult. And even now, like, with my job, we have to train all year round to be able to keep up with these top athletes. Um, and just being able to manage your time and still be able to do the family things and help out when I'm home, because a lot of times during the year I'm gone. I'll be out on the road for 10 days, and then I'll come home for 2, and then I'll be out again. So to be able to take care of things you have to take care of when you have time and when you have spare time, instead of a lot of people laugh at me now because on staff, because I don't have Netflix. I don't binge watch TV shows. So I try and manage my time and get things done that I need to get done on the road, so I can come home and be dad and take the kids to practice. And managing my time has always been one of the hardest things, as a student, working at the bank, and even now. And that's the biggest juggling act that I try my best to do, for sure.
Well, on behalf of Lakehead University and our Alumni Association, I just want to say thank you so much, Shandor, for your time and your presentation. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
do you have any parting words before I end this?
No, just thank you so much, guys, for your time, for your questions. They were great, and I really appreciate your attention and being able to be here with you guys for this great event. So thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.